This is Law of Attraction Explored. I'm your host, Tim Grimes. If you've been liking this show, then I suggest you take a look at my new book, The Law of Attraction Simplified, because that book really goes into a lot of detail about what we're talking about in all these episodes. And it gives a contextual framework that will deepen your understanding of everything we're discussing. You can find The Law of Attraction Simplified on Amazon, as well as all my other books. And for more information or to ask me a question, you can visit radicalcounselor.com. Enjoy the episode. So what we're doing is exploring this moment right now. And in this way, we're exploring the law of attraction. What I'm trying to convey, the general approach to what I'm trying to convey, is that this moment that we have right now is perfect. In other words, it's not a technique to get something when we acknowledge this present moment in this way. We already have what we want. That's the magic of this, of now. And so many mystical and spiritual teachings touch upon this. However, not that many touch upon it in the practical fashion that the law of attraction does. Meaning that when you align with this moment, feel good, and feel appreciative fully of this moment, you can then expect more goodness to flow into your life. But we don't acknowledge this moment in order to get something outside of it. We acknowledge this moment because it feels so good. And this feeling so good and so present naturally lets other good things come into our life. But we don't put the cart before the horse. If we think, I'm going to try to get something using the law of attraction, we can get something. But that's not the technique I'm talking about here. The approach I'm talking about here is not a technique. It's acknowledging that God is now. And this might seem complicated, but it's not complicated when we just drop it and get into the moment right now. This is peace and perfection, and we can recognize it so easily when we just drop that thinking that doesn't need to be there, that stress about a future that's fictional. Just drop it right now and recognize the moment. Let me give you a few quotes to expand and explore upon this approach. Neville said, "If God and man are one, then God can never be so far off as even to be near, for nearness implies separation." I'm going to read that again. If God and man are one, then God can never be so far off as even to be near, for nearness implies separation. This means that the recognition of right now is the recognition of eternity. There's no other time, really. There's nothing except for this moment. And yes, in a logical, rational way, it can be good to plan ahead to get certain things. And, there's things that we have to map out ahead of time, practically speaking. But on a deeper level, on a spiritual level, if you want to use that term, there really is only now. And we can always acknowledge that. We can, stop putting up that ruse that there's some other time or place. Spiritually, there's only this moment right now. Nearness would imply separation. And there's no near. There's no far. There's just this moment. And the more we allow ourselves to sink into it and to appreciate it, the better our life is. And also will be. But again, we don't do it for the will be as much as is. Because is enough. Right now is enough. No future, no past. No nearness, no separation. Only now. And I thought I'd bring Emilie Cady into the discussion. Emilie Cady is one of the great law of attraction teachers, and she's not that well known these days. Her work is the primary work of the Unity Church. And so if you're involved with Unity or have been in the past, you probably have heard her name. But unfortunately, most people who get into the law of attraction never find Emilie Cady. And she is more than just about any law of attraction teacher I have read, able to articulate what we're talking about right now. The deep spiritual nowness that is all that you ever could want, because it's perfect. So I'm going to read just an excerpt from one of her essays. The essay is called Oneness with God. This is over 100 years old, and it is just as timely as ever. She wrote, "True prayer, then, is just a continual recognition and thanksgiving that all is good, and that all good is ours now as much as it ever can be. Oh, when will our faith become strong and steadfast enough to take possession of our inheritance here? The Israelites entered not into the promised land because of their unbelief. Their inheritance was real and was awaiting them then and there, but it could not do them any good, nor give any enjoyment, until they took hold of it by faith, after which, and as a result of which, would have come the reality. It is this taking by faith that brings something into actuality and visibility. Why do our mortal minds postpone the acceptance of all good as our rightful inheritance for this life? The heir of material wealth must accept his inheritance before he can possibly come into its possession or use. So long as he rejects it, he is as poor as though nothing had been provided for him. All things are ours now, fullness of love, of life, of wisdom, of power. Even more than these, fullness of all good, which means abundance of all things, material as well as spiritual. Every generous act of giving, with every perfect gift, is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." That's James 1:17. Many of God's children are ceasing to look at the things of God from the objective standpoint and are learning to contemplate the facts of life from the subjective or higher side, even pronouncing all things good, as God does, until everything but the thought of good drops out of mind and only the good is manifest. How marvelous are the little glimpses we from time to time obtain of things as God sees them. To what high points of privilege are we, God's children, being lifted so that it is possible for us to see things from the standpoint of pure intelligence, perfect wisdom. Truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it. That's Matthew 13:17. One instant's view of the facts of life from the subjective side, God's side, makes all our carnal aspirations and struggles, all our ambitions, all our boasted wisdom and pride sink into utter nothingness. We see instead the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. 1 Corinthians 3:19. All other objects in life fade into insignificance besides the one of getting more into conscious oneness with the Father, where at all times we shall pray the true prayer of rejoicing and thanksgiving that all good is the only real thing in the universe. All good is the only real thing in the universe. And that all good is happening and is right now. The power can be found right now. Not by aspiring to be something in the future, but being something right now. All you look for, you already possess. That's the grace of God, the joyousness of God, by simply being here in the present moment. So that's a general sketch or approach to the law of attraction that we don't hear about that much, because it's almost backwards. It's not about getting something, usually. It's about dropping something. It's about dropping the false belief, dropping the overthinking, dropping the negative feeling. When those things go, when the fear goes, you go. And what remains is God, the recognition of the perfectness of now. And that is always enough.